If we are not actively working to make ourselves obsolete, our business will be.
What happened was I finally said to my partner, we've got to get specialized in something. And if we don't pick, our customers are going to pick for us, and that's going to be a painful journey.
Every leader needs a trusted partner for the moments that matter. This Bold Business Podcast conversation is that partnership. Your go-to resource designed to break the inertia and refresh your perspective so you can start making moves. Here is your host, an insightful truth teller who serves as the catalyst for getting the right work done and who asks the questions that truly matter. Jess Dewell.
On this episode of the Bold Business Podcast, I am talking to Erik Dodier. He is a former business owner with a successful exit. He is a lifelong entrepreneur, and today he is an EOS Implementer. At 24, he co-founded Pixel Media and spent almost 3 decades growing it to a leading global Salesforce commerce system. They adjusted along the way. They grew and they changed and they adapted to what they saw, what their clients needed, and who they were serving. And they were on that cutting edge every single step of the way. In this conversation, you're going to hear a lot of great information from Erik. And there are 3 things that I pulled out to listen for so you know that you're on track with the conversation, as well as make sure and really listen to what he says at those places. The first is, when it gets hard in our business, it comes down to, have we really committed to what we want to do? And the answer is usually no. The second thing is that there's a question that management teams, founders, and business owners don't want to ask that actually holds them back. And that is, do we have the right people in the right roles? And the third thing is that growth is evolving as a definition as the company does. And there are many small pivots along the way and adjustments to make sure that growth happens, evolution happens, and that your company is creating its future relevance right now. Everybody wants freedom of time and freedom of money, but I don't think they know what that really means. Erik, I want you to tell me, in your experience, having both right now, did you always think you had freedom of time and money? Or was it only because of where you're at in your life now that you can see you do now?
Yeah, no, I definitely do not think I always did. It was a long journey, right? I started one business at age 24 and built that over 30 years to finally have a really great exit and kind of find myself in this position to where I can manage my schedule how I want. I can take trips where I want. And again, everybody's freedom of money is going to be different, right? Some people just want more. I'm not really in that camp. Sometimes more is just more headaches, more problems, but definitely in a place where I can take care of my family, do the things we want to do, live a great lifestyle. And I'm super blessed for that.
I can remember we had this inkling to get on a plane for 3 days, starting on a Tuesday. And I looked at my calendar and I was like, oh, I could do that one from the road. And the rest of this I can reschedule. Yeah. We bought plane tickets on a Sunday and left on a Tuesday for 3 days.
Awesome.
The first time I did that, I had my mind was blown.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because in my brain, you always used to have to take a vacation for at least 7 days. Because,
oh, really?
Because otherwise you weren't getting your money's worth on the plane ticket. I always had this sort of scarcity mindset. If you didn't go from Saturday to Saturday, you're not being frugal enough. I'm like, wait, yeah, you can take a 4-day vacation. It's okay. But yeah, that's funny.
That's funny. I've never taken a 7-day vacation.
Oh, wow.
I think part of that, now I will tell you, in my whole career, we have had a lot of flexibility because even when we were building our first company, and even in Red Direction today for me, now that we're doing separate things, right? I actually built my first company with my husband and 2 other people. In that realm, we've always had some sort of flexibility. We can work from the road, we can do this, but we've also always had pets. So if they can't come with us, we were limited in that. And so I guess in a sense, I've always had a freedom of time and didn't really think too much about it. It was that time I could do that thing that, oh, we can buy a plane ticket 2 days from now and it's just fine.
And I've always been able to adjust my schedule, running a business, owning a business. Yeah. But unfortunately, you're physically present sometimes, but not mentally present because your brain is going 100 miles an hour. You're trying to solve the next problem. and that I've been able to let go because I'm not at the helm of 300-400 employees and thinking about them. So that's another nice gift.
How do you name that freedom?
What's that?
How do you name that freedom?
Boy, that's just freedom of your mental energy, I think. You can direct it where you want it instead of it just being directed for you. What's the next thing being placed on your plate that you got to go try and think about and solve?
Okay. Which one? Now we're talking about three things. And by the way, you're right. And I think it's really important to say, we may have freedom of time, even if we don't have freedom of money. We may have freedom of money, and we've created a life that we don't have freedom of time. And now we're talking about freedom of mental energy, which is new to me. And I'm really excited to be talking to you about this because I think it's always been there. It's one of those things that's never been named around. So let's name it and call it, Erik.
Sure, yeah.
And so even if we have one of those, we are incredibly blessed.
For sure.
And usually it's the one that we want the most, that I would say is where the clues are for us. It's like almost there if we're really willing to step in and look. What do you think?
Yeah.
Lean in.
Yeah. All of these things are made up in our mind that we need these things, right? If we truly ground ourselves in the present moment, we're all probably in a great place. But we get caught up and we've got to get to this next plateau and so forth. But at least in my case, building and running a business, I thought in the beginning was the ultimate freedom while running the business, while owning a business. What you find is you're so on the hook for so much. People say, oh, Erik, take day off. You're the boss. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to be there. You got to keep things moving. You don't want to be the bottleneck. In my experience, I got in it so heavy. I just had to get through that whole arc to see myself to the end. And I enjoyed doing it. I wouldn't have done it any other way.
What do you think is the biggest?
Many times, from when you're just two people and two partners, to 10 people, to 20, to 100, then you get investors and all those stages. That's probably why I could do it for 30 years. People say, oh, you had the same job. Well, no, I really did not have the same job for 30 years. It changed quite a bit. But,
do you ever, okay, so this is an idea that I've been talking about recently. I wonder how this sits with you and the work you do as an EOS implementer. And that is, if we, as the owners, management team, CEO, president, executive team, whatever, all of those people, if we are not actively working to make ourselves obsolete, our business will be.
You got to keep pivoting. From 1994, we started out putting content on CD-ROMs to where we ended becoming a Salesforce partner. Next thing, I tended to think our customers were the biggest indicator of where we should go next, because I could just listen to what they were asking for and we could start to get ahead of that conversation. And that was probably the thing that helped us keep evolving, keep pivoting. And then once we found the thing that we said, this is where we can stake our ground.
Before you continue, how long were you in business when you found that?
20 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a long journey.
I like to say we were figuring things out for 20 years, pivoting, moving, adjusting. And it actually took a really painful time where the business started to a bit contract. We were spread way too thin, doing too many things, right? Because we grew up saying yes to everything. And what we really weren't good at is saying no to a lot and then saying yes just to what was right for us. And then once we realized we had to decide what we were going to be great at instead of just jack of all trades, when we made that decision, the whole world changed, right? We started to go all in on e-commerce in 2014 and 15. And it becomes easier who you need to hire, what trade shows to go to, what technologies to invest in. Like every decision you make now becomes easier. And then we ran into EOS 3 or 4 years after that.
Okay, because when I hear what we decided what we were going to be best at, that makes me think of Jim Collins. But it also, traction. Yeah. Does traction cover that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. EOS, when you build out your vision, they call VTO in EOS terms, there's these 8 questions. What are your core values? The second question is, what is your core focus? And it gets you to really think hard about what do you want to be great at? Why does your company exist? And then make every decision focused in that arena so you don't get distracted, because every company can get distracted by other offshoot ideas. And then the other questions, core focus, 10-year target, marketing strategy, and then you start working backwards, your 3-year picture, your 1-year plan, quarterly rocks, and then your issues. And it really just captures big picture, where you're going, where you should be focused on, and then a very 90-day March approach to how to start to do what's most important in the present time to move towards that vision. Yeah. It's masterful how it's put together.
I'd like to pry a little bit, if you'll let me. You had mentioned a difficult time. It took a difficult time for some growth to occur. And what you were saying yes to is like the beginning of an answer, I think.
Yeah.
Was it true? Was it a pivot at that point? Was it truly a friction? How much of a break was there? Did you feel like there was a solution, or was there a part you felt like, man, I don't know if we're going to make it?
Oh, wow. Your instincts are so good, Jess. Like, absolutely. When you're in business for 20 years in the Northeast, my whole identity was in the business, right? At that point, we were involved with nonprofits. We did all sorts of things, but the business was always attached. And when it started to get a little shaky, I was really personally like concerned. If we can't keep this thing going, we were a services company, professional services. You're always chasing that next client, right? You never quite feel like you're out of the woods. You always feel like you're one client, one mistake away. And I remember thinking personally, and I didn't share it with a lot of people, that it was an emotional time. So I'm like, this business, I've built my whole identity around this business. I've got to find a path through. I've always been able to just continue to keep my head down and keep grinding. I had a great business partner. We still had a great team, but the times were changing. A lot of technology was popping up around us. We couldn't keep up with everything, and competitors doing things better than we were. And so what was happening is we were losing business to companies that were very specialized, and we were more the generalists. And what happened was I finally said to my partner, we've got to get specialized in something. And if we don't pick, our customers are going to pick for us, and that's going to be a painful journey. So we basically just dug in and focused on this e-commerce part of our business. That was at that time our strongest part of our business, and made a bet, pushed all the chips into that area. And that made all the difference from where we went from that point.
That's okay. So you had some inkling that was not even an okay way to go, but the way to go. And the only experience I have is personal in terms of business. I made business decisions, but sometimes it's really hard to describe unless you've actually been in it.
Yeah.
A lot of people listening and watching will have purchased or looked at or attempted to purchase some sort of real estate. So if I do that, when we were looking for our last house here in Kirkland, Washington, it took us 4 years. I hate to admit that. We started out too specific, and then we got too general. And then we found this sweet spot, and we came up with this phrase called A1, not the house, A1 house. So it was like a house that was number one at the same, it could be both things at the same time. Yeah. And that was how we got rid of some noise to really help ourselves out when we both knew what we wanted. We both understood and were on the same page. When it came right down to it, we couldn't get to the close in a lot of situations. We got in our own way. Yeah. If you apply that to business, heck, you were even saying it. There are a lot of things we were good at. There are a lot of things we were doing. I could see all of the things our competition are doing different or better than us. And I have been there. I totally can personally relate. And so I'm guessing you had a few A1 solutions that ultimately e-commerce won out on. Am I sensing that right? Or was your process totally different?
The way we landed where we were going, it was a part of our business, but we just hadn't committed to it 100%. We would say yes to that and then yes to these other things. And eventually we said, you know what, we can't do all of this. We can't cover all this ground. And we just looked at the parts of the business that I think we liked the best, that we were really good at, that we loved the clients more. There were clear signals that this was the right direction for us. And once we got it we said, if we announce this to our company, this is where we're going to go all in on this. So let's get it up over at least 50% of our revenue. And then we'll say, hey, everybody, this is where we're going. Because at that point, what happens is people will decide if they want to go on that journey with you, right? They may say, hey, and it did happen. A couple of employees would say, hey, we like doing these other things. We like building iPhone apps. We like building other applications. And we're saying, we're not going to do that anymore. And we ultimately let those people leave on their own or off board, which was painful. Because I bet for a year, I'd have someone come to my office that's been with us for 10, 12 years saying, hey, Erik, I love you guys, but I got to move over here. And if not, they also were nervous if we could pull this off, sort of change the engine on the plane while it's flying, I think.
It does take a certain kind of an employee to stick with a small company through that, for sure.
But ultimately, we were blessed to have a good core group that was in this part of the business. So they loved it. They said, yeah, let's keep going. So I'd say a third were already doing it. A third made the transition to the new direction we were going. And a third offboarded at their time. But what's great about that is when you offboard those people, you then can hire the people into your new vision where you're going. So it almost speeds up the process. The faster they leave that don't want to go with you, the sooner you can get to where you want to go.
It's a real big blessing.
Feeling stuck? Like, what got you here won't get you there. The pressure to grow is on, yet the path isn't clear yet. You don't have to walk that path alone. This is the Bold Business Podcast. Like and subscribe wherever you listen. Your host, Jess Dewell, is the strategic partner you've been looking for, asking the questions that truly matter. It's time to break the inertia and get the perspective you need to make your next move.
This is the Bold Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jess Dewell, and today I am talking with Erik Dodier. I do believe in serendipity, and I do believe in the positive that comes from coincidence, and that is just that exchange of energy. Yeah. Right. And if the energy is such and the communication is such and the intention is such so that the priorities are this way, it's very clear I can be here or my journey here is done.
Yeah.
It's hard to make, especially on a heart level and maybe even in a logical level, but the energy can make that happen. So that's a bottleneck. So we're talking about a little bit of bottlenecks. Employees have their own bottleneck. Do we want to grow this way or not? You as a company, we have bottlenecks. How do we want to grow? And can we be consistent with that no matter what, right? What are we going to commit to? So in the role that you played, what were some of the places you ended up actually as a bottleneck, either consciously or subconsciously?
I think up until, say, the 20 years or so, we didn't have it figured out. The bottleneck was not being super clear on what the vision of the business was, where we were going. I thought I was communicating it. I thought I was sharing it. I'm like, wait, I'm here every day working. Don't they see me working towards this? Where are we going with this? And that's something that when we ended up using it in our business, we got super clear on the vision. So not only did we pick a direction and the flywheel started to turn, that's also when we found EOS and EOS found us and we said, wow, there's a better way to organize all this human energy in this business. Mm-hmm. And that was the tools in EOS, like getting the vision super clear and communicating it, right? It's not just enough to have one. It's you got to keep communicating it. What are your core values? Where are you going? What's your core focus? So when we got that flywheel turning, everything changed. The business started to accelerate. We were about 15 million in revenue and 75 people after 25 years. In the next 3 years, we started using EOS. We grew that by 5x because we just opened our aperture of how we could grow this business, including investment, including private equity, including merging other companies in that complemented what we did. It's like sometimes we should stop worrying about how we're going to do something and just focus, okay, that's where we want to go. We'll let that unfold over time. And that's what we did. We set out this big vision and instead of taking 10 years, it took more like 3 or 4 years to make it happen.
Were you writing down goals? Did you have some sort of a process and it just wasn't as leveraged?
We used to do this sort of yearly plan and we create a picture and put it on the wall. But it was done a little bit. I like getting the employees together and let's do some exercises and brainstorm and stuff like that. So we always were doing stuff like that, but it wasn't cohesive and methodical of how we were going to get to those things, right? Because that's the other thing EOS introduces, your quarterly rocks and setting your priorities and not trying to do everything all at once. And we probably were a victim of always trying to do too much, right? At the same time.
Yeah.
And if something came up, we got distracted, right?
That's right. We have to find out, is there potential here for us right now?
Yeah. And that's hard, right? You never really can dig in. So once we got more clear, tackling things, setting priorities, and honestly, just a better, healthier leadership team, honestly, has made all the difference, right? Getting leaders in place that could really own their areas instead of looking at me, like saying, hey, you guys, you know how to do this better than I can. You run with that.
And that changes your role too. I actually think a lot of companies have these concepts of priorities, and I think you described it really well. I've encountered it in my own business. Oh, that wasn't clear enough because all of a sudden I don't have a rock. I just have this big mess here and I'm actually not on track to meet my goal. Right. And that's an indicator, right? A clue that it's not clear enough because it's not solid enough. And one of the things I found was contribution from everybody makes it hard. So somebody has to take the role and go, yes, no, never, or yes, not now, never. And somebody has to go, here's what is now, and see what happens. And one of the things that I have found as hearing it all and then having that decision made by a 1 to 2 people, maybe 3, depending on the leader, the management team, to take to the board, if there's a board and all of that, really comes down to me to be, that's where any rifts will show up. And so there's no way to diagnose or put the attention someplace else, because whoever made those choices, that's where the buck stops. It does it not.
The leadership team definitely has to set the big priorities, right? What are we going to get done? And then ideally, though, if the team's bought in and the leadership team's communicating, then the rest of everybody wants to participate in how do we help achieve those rocks? And so that everybody's collective energy is all contributing, funneling up towards the common goal. But yeah, we tell the story. It's like a team of people chopping a road through a forest. And someone yells up, "Oh, we're making great progress," but somebody has to climb the tree and look and make sure, are we going in the right direction? And that's up to the leadership team, right? They need to make sure they're sharing, are we going in the right direction?
And through the forest is very rarely everybody in a line together. It's usually a trail.
Yeah.
One foot in front of the other, following. I think that's a big part too. And that's not to say there isn't accountability and ownership and leadership in every single role. I think that makes letting the how unfold, like what you were talking about, that's truly how it occurs.
Getting everybody to understand where it is in the organization impacts the bigger picture is even another way to harness that energy, right? Because now everybody's saying, hey, maybe I'm the delivery driver, I'm the warehouse person, I'm the salesperson, but we're all contributing to this ultimate vision, right? And I understand how my role impacts it. I understand the things that I need to get done on a daily basis, a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And it's very clear lines, right? So that they don't jump into everyone else's role, right? Just because they feel like it, or, oh, I got to go jump in over here and help this person out.
Yeah.
The do your job mentality.
It creates a little, which by the way, is a better direction of resource, time, and energy for each person too, right? If I felt like I'm supposed to go help somebody else all the time for whatever reason, my work gets neglected.
Yeah.
Or I get neglected.
Yeah.
Or I'm unavailable for the things that people need from me to help remove the obstacles that actually make everything move forward.
Yeah.
And I hear you loud and clear there. Thinking about what you've learned, and I know I've learned a lot too, not only through exit, but through mergers and acquisitions of acquiring companies and growing through down markets. I've got a lot of questions, but I want to know from you. I want to know, what do you think the top question that a founder, owner, management team is either afraid or wants to avoid asking when they're truly sitting down to find out if they're poised for future growth?
In their roles, and maybe the business has grown and you've outgrown some of the people, or you've got some weaker areas, or you've got some people that, maybe are causing more challenges than they should. Being able to have those conversations and then make hard decisions about getting people all in people right seats. People they believe in the core values of that business, right? They fit there. They just show up every day and go, hey, these are my people. And then right seats, are they in a job that suits them and that they get it and they want a capacity to do it? And I'm weaving in some EOS terms here, but
absolutely.
That's magic, right?
Yeah.
We all will settle, right? Oh, it's tough. It's a tough job market. They're doing 70% of the job. It's fine. Just let them do it. And that, I think, is what leadership teams can struggle with, or it's probably what's holding them back, right? If they've plateaued or stuck, it's probably some people stuff in there below the surface that they're not quite tackling.
I really like how you said that. They're only doing 70% of the job. That is a metric disguised as justification.
For sure.
And I want to call it out because I think the thing, if it were flipped around, tell me what you think about this. So here's where my mind went, is someone is doing 100% of their job and is at 70% capacity. How is that different than only doing 30% of the job? Let's keep the numbers the same.
Yeah. 70% of the job, the way I view it is there's the 100% of the responsibilities that need to get done. And 70% is getting done. And these other 30%, whether because they don't like to do those things, they don't know how to do those things, they don't want to do those, whatever the reason is, whatever that chunk is, they're not getting done. It's impacting their ability to execute on that role. And if they're in a leadership position, I should also say, it's compounds exponentially, right? So that leadership team that has managers down below, or even on the leadership team that aren't executing well, now you've got compounding issues, right? But that's people. And again, that happens because people outgrow. The company maybe has outgrown their ability to elevate up. Maybe they've taken on so much they're not willing to delegate down, because sometimes the opposite happens. People try to do 130% and they can't. And they're not using their team. They're not pushing down. So you have a manager that's saying, I have to do these things because no one else can do it as good as me. So that's equally as constricting, right? Because now they're the bottleneck, right? They're not executing on the job in its full capacity, or they're trying to do too much. And that's causing them to struggle.
That's interesting, because I'm thinking about this and I'm like, I want my people to have capacity. I don't want them 100% tapped out every single day, all of the time, day in and day out. Yeah. That's a sprint.
Yeah.
Because it's easy. It takes one thing. It takes one thing to push everything else over. And then now we're at a new level and there's more to actually do than there is time or resources to get it done.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and I know some companies, and this will be interesting to hear your take because this is all brand new. Some companies are like, ooh, let me AI that. Whatever AI means to them, right? That's why I used it that way in a little bit of a cheeky fashion. How do you feel about that?
AI is not going to help the person that doesn't know. There's the relationship side, the processing, the information side. There's a certain amount of thinking about what AI gives back to you that you got to then eventually make a decision on. It speeds up the research, but then you got to execute on those thoughts and ideas within your business. You got to communicate those ideas. You got to get people on board with those ideas. You've got to figure out how to share those ideas. So I don't know that AA might be a little bit of an accelerant to arrive at decisions or give greater choices or options to think about. But the execution of it, is still the people moving that forward.
I think it's fun. I think that being an early adopter in a company, regardless of industry, has its benefits, because provided it's okay to say no and let it go, right? You had mentioned earlier you were part of a company that said yes to everything. By the way, I've been there and said yes to everything. And so now I'm thinking about all this cool time and all these neat things. We can't do all of the experiments. So which experiments do we want to do? And then my thought is, well, put an end on it, because if you want to try something new, go for it. You'll know with it, and you know what the collective, whoever is making these decisions, and even if it's just a quarter, at a minimum, when we're checking in quarterly, make it a quarterly experiment. What did you learn? Is it working? And if it is not, great, say stop and give the time to something else. It was worth an experiment that didn't take up everything. But if we never say no to the things we said yes to, then we get into this trap of a really big problem for execution, because it goes to what you said at the beginning, which you didn't say it like this, but I will. We got squirrely and we have all kinds of things going in every which direction, and we're actually going nowhere.
There's definitely an element of every once in a while think about the things you should stop doing. Sometimes that's even as individuals, right? Which I've done this for so long, I just keep doing it, even though it's not adding value to anything in my life. Or as a business, what should, as a business, we stop doing, right? Because it just isn't serving us anymore. Yeah.
So have you ever, I'm trying to think about, we've been talking about execution here for a little bit, and how is having a strategy, being clear and communicating it, different than having a habit of execution?
I think when you have a habit of execution, you just stay in the keep grinding mode, right? Rather than pulling your head back and going, wait, are we actually executing on the right things? If I'm understanding your question, I think when you have a strategy, what you're doing is you're more tacking to the strategy, like sailing a boat. You're never going exactly at it. You're doing these things, but you're always finding your way there. I think a habit of execution is what we had prior to having a clear strategy. We just thought we were so productive that we'll get to some destination. If you don't know where you're going, any old which way will do, I guess the expression goes. But I think that habit goes deep, right? It's, we're so good at doing all these things. These things really leading us to where a better business or a bigger business or the business we want to have that's serving more people, whatever it is, or we just grinding every day. So I don't think
every day is really hard, and not being able to stop that is really hard. Do you feel like that was part or most of the first 20 years of your journey? Was that a habit you had? You had a habit of grind? Today? I hear that in the present tense.
What's that?
I heard that in the present tense, not the.
I think now it's more personally like, all right, do I need to get up every day at 5 and go? I could adjust my schedule now. My world has changed a little bit. But in the business, we would just do stuff and show lots of productivity and win new clients and and we didn't think, was these the right type of clients to win? Or is this kind of business good for us? If we won, great, more work, let's go, more work. And it led us to some good places. We got the business to a point where we could then strategically decide, all right, we're now going to go in this direction. And some of that is early days of starting a business, you say yes to almost everything because you just have to.
We got to keep the lights on. Here we go.
But that does become a habit. That's the habit. That's where it forms early on. And it's hard to break.
Okay. So looking back, I want to know, what are a few things that if you were going to do it all over again, you would do differently this time because of who you've become today, looking at your past self?
Some of this is the lessons I've learned with EOS. I would get clear on make sure we're filtering the type of people that join the organization instead of just, that they can do that task, just hire them. They can fill the seat. Like, you get caught up in trying to check the box. Be very intentional about the people you bring in. Be more clear about the direction of the business and communicate that. And then just continue to always find those right people and give them the responsibilities that they deserve to have and execute on their role. I'm not one of these people that looks back and says, I wish I did it. It all happens. It all goes a direction, because it's funny. I see people that build and sell businesses and it takes them like 6, 7 years, 8 years. And then they try to do it again. Mm-hmm. And that one fails and they lose everything they got in the first one. And I think to myself, thank God it took me 30 years, because if it didn't, I probably would have done another one and I would have failed miserably. I'm actually looking back on the 30-year journey and saying it's like a perfect window of time to take you from like your 25 to 50-ish window. And I'm 55 now. Uh-huh. It's because it's like your life's like in these 4 chapters. Your early years up to 25 to 50, 55. Everyone's going to live to probably 100 these days.
I want to be triple digits.
Yeah.
The last time I got a digit was when I went from 9 to 10. I got to get a third digit.
But this is like a whole new chapter of 25 years of just how can I enjoy this part? But because I see people that dive back in, they do it all again. I'm thinking, why do you want to do it all again? Enjoy the reward and take a different path. But everybody's got their own path.
Oh, yeah. In my house, we got 2 paths.
Yeah.
And because you look around at the community you built, you look around at the businesses that you're serving, and I'll look at the businesses I'm serving. And there's a reason I jump back in. There's a reason I go do that. And I have had spectacular failure. Yeah, let's bring it. No, I really didn't feel that in the moment. But looking back, it's of course, because we can control and we can influence.
If your week feels like you're being pulled from one demand to the next, this is for you. The daily grind is the #1 killer of business instinct, pulling you and your team away from your vision. Reclaim your strategic edge with the Present Retreat. This free guide from Red Direction is a simple, powerful framework to carve out the space you need to filter out the noise, make the right decisions, and lead with clarity. Visit presentretreat.com.
You are listening to Erik Dodier with me, your host, Jess Dewell, on the Bold Business Podcast. Let's get back to the conversation. Was there something that you did or ever that, because I did, and when you were speaking about what you had learned, I was like, oh, I did this thing and it was ridiculous. Was there anything you did out of a really good intention and you look back and you were like, why the heck did we ever try that? And I want to know from a leadership perspective, right? Guiding and bringing people along more than a personal skill or something like that.
Yeah. It's funny. People ask, do you look back on a situation? I don't dwell a lot on, because my energy is always almost in forward motion. Right. So it's hard for me to then go back and go, oh, what was that thing I did wrong? So I probably never looked at it as wrong. I had an awesome business partner. We complement each other very well. That was a great decision. Yeah, we had some little missteps with business, just certain client things we did and so forth. But sometimes they would just, when you're trying to get technical projects and all people working on the same thing and the clients are different and the timeline's different, some of that stuff just happens.
This happens. It sounds like we started our businesses about the same time, our first businesses. I was 20 years old. I had never been in a management position and I had 8 people. Yep. And I was like, I got to learn. I guess everybody else is going to want to learn with me. So I turned 15 minutes of every staff meeting into self-help book club.
Okay.
Failed.
Yeah.
Nobody cared about that except for me. I didn't listen. I'm like, we just have to have some practice at this. But after a few weeks, I was like, no. And I dug my heels in. After 8 weeks, I was like, okay, fine. I'll read this on my own and we'll just try it. I'll just try stuff out and we'll figure this out. And that'll be fine.
It was pre-EOS, but we had core values, but we did do an exercise where we tried to come up with, and it could have worked, but I don't think I stayed with it long enough. But I would read books, and I was a Vistage member and CEO peer groups.
Mm-hmm.
Come back with ideas. And I think after a while, Erik's got another idea. But this one was about getting the core behaviors that you wanted to encourage. So beyond core values, like how do you want people to act?
Yeah.
And you would define them, and we had these little booklets. And I remember thinking, this is great. Like, this is going to tell people everything they need to know of what to do in any moment. Act this way, behave, do the right thing. And it was detailed in a booklet. And I still remember seeing when we finally sold the business, I still had hundreds of these booklets around. I'm going, I don't think that ever really stuck. I think it was a good exercise.
Yeah.
If any of my past employees are listening, they're probably going, oh yeah, Erik, we remember that one. The 22 behaviors or whatever it was. And well-intentioned, it just didn't.
I was like, I'm going to pretend I know nothing and learn with me. Yeah. That was nobody liked that. And I love that. You said 22 habits.
Yeah, I can see the booklet now. They fold it up into threes.
And that's, like I said, I wouldn't have changed it because it's actually who I was. And it sounds the same for you. Ooh, new idea, something that we can all grow together. Why not do something that makes sure that basically solidifies our path?
Yeah.
Turns out one of us isn't going to know what the whole path needs. All of us do.
I heard another, like sometimes things that I just didn't probably stick with it long enough. Like an entrepreneur, I'm like, oh, I'm on to the next thing. And they're like, Erik, what happened to the thing we just did? And now luckily EOS, we put that in 2019, 18, 19. We sold the business in 2022, but that actually everybody loved. Everybody loved it. I don't know. In fact, some people are like, Erik, thank God we put that in before COVID, because like when COVID came, we were an in-office company because we had started way in the 90s. We went remote, but we used the EOS sort of tools and vision and metrics. I said, hey, no matter where you are, if you're working home, whatever, just stay focused on what we're trying to do and your role. And it just kept us glued together.
We didn't to not feel dispersed. Teams are very interesting, and it's very different than in-person teams. And so that's cool that you found a bridge, actually. That was a positive, especially in a time of big struggle for a lot of people. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the other thing. How much, and maybe still today, right? Owning a business, exiting a business, working now with other companies who are growing and scaling. How do you know what's in your control?
Me personally, or the business itself? Or
Sure.
It's funny. I'd like to think a lot is within your control. You have a lot of agency of what you do. The world things are going to happen, but you have control over how you react to what's happening, right? Do you just throw your hands up and give up, or do you try to pivot and weave and move? Or do you got to go find a new team member? Do you got to find another client? Do you got to pivot to a partner? So there's so many creative things you can do to solve any problem. I mentioned I was part of a business group, and there was a gentleman in there. And I remember one day he was going to lose his IT guy, and he was at the end of his rope because the IT person knew everything about the business, right? Like IT people, they're so dependable. And another person says, look, everything is figure outable, but it was like, it's fine. And I think we catastrophize these things that really you just need to think of a creative path forward, right? What's the next best step we can take given, the situation? And in that, if you stay in that mindset, you always have control. You don't have control of what's happening, but you have control over your reaction to it, your next steps, what you're going to do. Are you going to get crazy about it, or are you going to just stay calm? And that probably was a skill of mine. I was pretty even keeled. That helps me manage these ups and downs.
That's cool to know about yourself. And it's cool other people see that in you too, Erik.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. How many business model pivots? It sounded like switching to 100% e-commerce was one of them. How many pivots did you have in that 25 years of business model?
There were so many more early on because the internet was coming along, and people over at least 45 or 50s. We started out the business to put digital content on CD-ROMs. This is in 1994. And I started to go talk to clients. And one day my client's saying, Erik, what about the web? This web thing's coming along. We don't want it on a CD-ROM. We want it on the web, on the internet. And thinking, oh, darn, that's not what we started to do. So I went back and talked to my business partner. And he was the technology guy. I was more the sales guy.
Mm-hmm.
He took a HTML 1.0 book home and basically read the book over the week and came back on Monday and said, no problem, we'll build websites. And that was the first pivot. That was only 6 months in. And so we learned quickly. I'm like, okay, we're going to be adjusting a lot as we go.
I love that they weren't really big pivots. That's actually a really cool thing. And pivot as adjustment versus pivot as we got to figure out something new or else, right? Those are two very different things. And I appreciate how you're using pivot, as it's a good reminder to say, hey, it doesn't have to be drastic. It has to be open, aware, and we have to be curious about it so we know where we're stepping next.
The later one was the bigger pivot specifically to this one platform technology.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, there is a bit element of luck that happens. The technology that we had selected to go all in on, it was this technology called Demandware. And there was a commerce platform for big brands, Skechers and Echo Shoes and Stonewall Kitchen. And that's why we love that. Bigger brands, bigger projects. The Salesforce ended up buying Demand just as we went all in on it. And we're like, this is either going to be really good or a disaster. And it turned out that all of a sudden, all this attention got put onto this platform. And we were one of the handful of probably a dozen to 20 partners really in the US that were doing this in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, big Salesforce clients were calling up saying, hey, we use Salesforce, but they don't know how to do the commerce piece. You guys know how to do it because they just acquired it. And so we were getting all of a sudden brought into the Salesforce conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's the direction we finally went. We became a Salesforce partner, not really by choice, because this company got purchased. We said, all right, we'll go in that, we'll continue. Mm-hmm. And we ended up, the acquisitions we did were 2 more Salesforce services companies that complemented what we did. And then we built this one larger company that was very attractive to a IPG, an Interpublic group in New York. And they bought us in 2022. I think there's 1 or 2 founders still there, but everyone is also living a similar exited on. But 2 of them started another business. One's doing some consulting. They're all kind of finding their own path. But,
it's amazing, huh? It's pretty cool. So what makes it bold, Erik? What makes it bold to admit that the way that you got to 10 million is going to be very different from the way that you reach 100 million?
I think what makes it bold is you have to have faith. You have to unlearn everything you learned that got you to 10 and say, it's going to be a different, what got you here won't get you there. And so I think you do have to make some bold moves, and they feel bold in the sense that it's different, but it also feels necessary. It's bold, but it's not because I'm brave or courageous, it's just what we got to go do. Let's just roll up our sleeves and go do it. And in that sense, I think people looking in from the outside are like, wow, you guys really went for it. You went all in on this one thing and then took advantage of that opportunity, built around that one thing and complemented and took it from 75 people to 500 people. And Salesforce was booming at that time. This is in the early 2020, 2021, 22. People were investing heavily in digital because of COVID. COVID actually was good for our business because people thought no one was ever going to go in a store again. So everybody said, we got to get everything on e-commerce. So all of a sudden we're getting phone calls like, hey, we got to get our business really tuned up for e-commerce because no one's ever going to shop in person again.
It's true.
We just rode that wave, but it's create your own luck is what you got to do sometimes.
And that brings us to the close of another powerful and fresh perspective on the Bold Business Podcast. In today's volatile landscape, growth is a double-edged sword. To truly thrive, you must engage with your strategy, not just react to the day-to-day. Without absolute alignment, your company faces a stark choice: outmaneuver or be outmaneuvered, grow or get left behind. Thank you for listening. And a special thanks to the Scott Treatment for technical production.